You know that annoying moment when you're trying to pour something sticky out of a cold jar and it just sort of sits there, like the spoon has to negotiate with it? Now picture that same stuff out in the street, moving fast enough to knock people down. That is the Great Molasses Flood. And yes, it sounds ridiculous until you remember that 21 people died in Boston because of it. The tank was in Boston's North End, and it was huge, about 50 feet tall, roughly 90 feet across, holding 2.3 million gallons of molasses for United States industrial alcohol. This was 1915, right in the middle of wartime demand, when molasses wasn't just for baking or rum jokes. It was part of the machinery of industrial alcohol and munitions. And from the beginning, the tank had a problem. It leaked. It made noise. People noticed. The steel was reportedly too thin, had too little manganese, and the whole thing had never been properly tested under a full hydrostatic load. That's not a tiny oversight. That's the kind of missed step that turns into a tragedy later. And that's the part I can't stop thinking about. The warning signs were not subtle. They were basically tap dancing in the hallway. Then came January 15th, 1919, around 12:30 in the afternoon. The tank failed, and a wave of molasses surged out. Reports put the initial wall of it somewhere between 15 and 40 feet high, about 160 feet wide, moving at roughly 30 to 35 miles an hour. 35 miles an hour! For a second, your brain wants to file that under cartoon physics. It can't. Not if you're standing there. Not if you're a kid on the street, or a worker nearby, or one of the 3 firemen at the local station who were among the dead. The wave crushed structures, tore through the north end, injured about 150 people, and killed 21. And if you're wondering how syrup can do something like that, well, the answer is scale and temperature. Molasses is thick, but it's also changeable. Warm it up and it moves. Let it cool in winter air and it thickens fast. So the first rush could behave like a flood, and then the same material turned heavier and harder to escape. People weren't only hit by the force of it, they were trapped by it. That's the nightmare of the thing. It goes from mess to can't get out in very little time. The cleanup was its own grim little marathon. Workers used sand and salt water from the harbor, but molasses sticks to everything it touches, so it got tracked through the neighborhood on shoes, carts, and equipment. The smell reportedly lingered for years, especially in warm weather, which is honestly rude of the universe. And the legal aftermath dragged on for about 5 to 6 years, with around 3,000 witness statements collected before a court-appointed auditor, and later findings pinned the disaster on negligence. The company paid more than $600,000 in settlements, which is a lot of money now and was a huge amount then. What mattered most wasn't just the payout, it was the shift in expectation. After the flood, building oversight got stricter. Engineers had to sign and seal plans. Inspectors had to actually review projects. Calculations had to be documented. That sounds dry. I know. It is dry. But dry rules are what keep wet disasters from happening again. So the story I care about isn't really syrup flood. It's this. A thing that looks harmless in a kitchen can become violent when you scale it up. Ignore the cracks and trust vibes instead of evidence. And the next time a sticky jar refuses to pour, maybe you'll think of Boston for half a second. And then, hopefully, of why we build safety systems before we need them.